Hello, here's Klaus from Figma-Low-Code. In this tutorial I will show how to create a simple prototype with Figma and Vue. The first thing that I did was to create a new prototype in Figma. It consists of 3 screens. The first screen allows you to see your to-dos, the second screen allows you to create a new to-do, and the third screen allows you to edit an existing to-do. The prototyping view shows how the screens are wired. In the simulation environment, you can see that if you click on the plus button, you can create a new to-do, and if you click on an existing to-do, you can edit it. The first thing that I have to do when I want to create this Figma design into a Vue application is to go to the Figma-Low-Code GitHub page and clone the repository. I click on the clone button and I copy the URL that is in there. Afterwards, I go to the console and I type in git clone and then paste the URL. Now I change into the newly created repository and type in npm install to install all the dependencies. The installation might take some time. Afterwards, I have to install the Figma-Low-Code plugin. Just click on Install in the Figma community page. The next step is to open Visual Studio Code and open the created project. Let's open the terminal and start the Vue development server. Just type in npm run serve. In the meantime, let's have a short look at the package.json. It is the standard JSON package that was created by the Vue CLI, with one addition, the Vue-Low-Code package. Now we open the home.vue. This is the main entry point for the application. In the home.vue, you can see that there is a data property called Figma config. In here you have to enter the Figma file ID and your access key. The Figma file ID can be copied out of the Figma URL. Just paste the file ID in the Figma file property. Now we are missing the Figma access key. We go back to Figma and then we navigate back to the main menu and open our profile settings. Now we click on Settings and click on Create New Personal Access Token. We give it a name and we copy the token. The access key is afterwards copied into the home.vue in the Figma access key field. Now we are done with the configuration. If we go to the browser and open localhost 8080, we can see that the Figma design is already loaded. You can also see that it's fully responsive. This is nice. In the developer console, we can also inspect the HTML and CSS that was generated. One thing that you will notice is that input fields are just rendered as div elements, so the user cannot enter any data. Let's change this. We go back to Figma, and in there we start the Figma-Low-Code plugin. The plugin allows you to select elements and specify the input type. For instance, for the name field, we choose the input field, and for the details, we choose the text area type. If we go back to the browser and reload the page, you can see that the rendering has changed. The correct input elements are used, and the users can enter data. However, the text style of the input elements doesn't really match the UI. We fix this by placing labels over the input elements and styling these. The Figma-Low-Code component is so smart to copy the style of the label into the input element during runtime. As an alternative, we could have just turned the label into an input element. Back in the browser, we can reload the page. If we put the focus in the name field, we can see that the new text style was adopted. Web forms have often hover or focus effects. We can also set these in the Figma-Low-Code plugin. Just go to the Styles tab and select the right color. When you go back to the browser, you can see that the focus effect was applied. In a real application, we want to have access to the user data. To do so, we have to find a data binding in the Figma plugin. So we select the element and then we enter the name of the variable in the data binding field. Now we have to go back to Visual Studio Code and edit the view model in there. We create a new variable called name. Please make sure that this is the same value that you have entered in the Figma plugin. We can also edit a default value, for instance, new to do. When we reload the page in the browser, we can see that now the value of the variable was bound to the field. Figma-Low-Code supports also complex data bindings. For instance, if we want to address a nested field, we can use the dot notation. For instance, new to do .name. Complex data bindings are useful to structure your data. Let's, for instance, bind the text area for the details field to new to do.details. Now we have to update the view model in the home.view file. So we create a new object, new to do, and we add two variables, name and details. When we reload the browser, we can see that both values are now shown in the UI. The font style of the text area is not the same as of the name field. To fix this, we place a label over the text area and style it, so that the Figma-Low-Code component can copy the font styles. In the browser, you can see that the new text styles are applied after a reload. Once the user has entered the name and the details of the to-do, we would like to save it. To do so, we have to implement a save method. First, we go to Figma. We select the element and we enter the method binding. We want to call this on the click event, so we enter here a name of the method, for instance, create new to-do. After reloading the page, we can click on the Save button. In the developer tools, we can see that there's an error. There is no create new to-do method, so we have to implement it. In Visual Studio Code, we go back to the home.view file and we go to the method section to implement the method. For now, we just log to the console the event that is passed to the method. When we reload the page and click on Save, we can see in the developer tools that the method was called and the event was logged to the console. We also can see that there is a view model field in the event. The view model holds the data that is shown in the UI. Now we have a method that has access to the user input. Let's save the input in a new to-do. The first thing that we do is we create an array to hold all to-dos. We just call it to-dos and place it in the view model. Now let's build the create new to-do method. We simply push an object to the newly created array in the view model. As you can see, we can access also the view model over the this operator. We do not have to use the event. If we go back to the web page and click on Save, we can see that a new item was added to the to-do list. If we click a second time, there will be a second item. Once the user has clicked on Save, we want him to return to the main page. To do so, we have to return a value in the create new to-do method. So we go back to Visual Studio Code, and in there we return the name of the home screen. Now let's try it out. We go back to the website and click on Save. You can see that we have been navigated to the home screen. Under the hood, the Figma-Low-Code component searched for a screen that had the same name as the returned value. You can use this mechanics also to implement conditional navigational flows. Now that we have created a to-do item, we want to show it. So the first thing we do is we go to Figma. We select the home screen and mark it as the start screen in the Figma plugin. We also define a callback for the page load event. This method will be called once the Figma screen is loaded. If we go to the browser and reload the page, we can see that there's a warning that the method is not implemented. We go back to Visual Studio Code and implement it. For now, the method is very simple. We will just create some dummy data and add it to the view model. So we type this.viewModel.todos.push and we create there some dummy to-do items. In a real application, we could, for instance, call a web service to get data from the backend. To show the to-do list in Figma, we have to use the repeat element. This is a smart container. In Figma, we select the repeater artboard. Afterwards, we go to the Figma plugin, select Smart Container and Repeat Children. The next thing to do is to create a data binding for the input. We call it to-dos. Next, we select the title label and we add a data binding. In this case, we bind to the name variable of a to-do item. We also add a data binding to the details. So we select the details label and create a data binding to details. When we reload the web page, we can see that the dummy data is shown. Now we want to make the checkbox selectable. In Figma, we select the checkbox border element. We also make it a smart container, but we choose the toggle children option. Last, we create a data binding to the isDone variable. In the browser, we can now toggle the checkboxes. The state of the element is bound to the isDone variable. So if it is true, the child elements are shown, in this case the hook of the checkbox. When the user clicks on a to-do item, the added page is shown. Here we would like to show, of course, the values of the selected to-do item. To do so, we first create the right widget elements. So we create an input element for the name and a text area for the details. We also create a new data binding. In this case, selected to-do.name and selected to-do.details. In Visual Studio Code, we update the view model. We create a new element selected to-dos and add a name property as well as a details property. Back in the browser, when we select an element, we can see that the values of the selected to-do property are shown. Of course, we would like to show the real value of the selected element. To do so, we select the repeater element and we create an output data binding. In this case, the selected to-do. If we select now an element in the browser, we can see that the correct values are shown. If we update them, we would like to navigate back and update also the values. To do so, we create a new method binding that we call on updateToDo. To be able to do an update, we need an ID. So we simply add ID attributes to all the items that we manage. Now we implement the update method. We simply search for the selected to-do item by the ID and replace the name and details property with the values from the selected to-do object. This viewModel.selectedToDo.name and this viewModel.selectedToDo.details. The method returns the value home to navigate back to the home screen. Now let's go back to the prototype. If we select an existing to-do and click on it, we will go to the update page. If we change, for instance, the name in there and click on Save, you can see that the values are updated in the home screen again. When we click on the plus button, we will go to the New Create screen. In there, we can enter the name of a new to-do and we can also change the details. Once we click on Save, we will be routed back to the home screen. And you can see that the new to-do item is shown in the list. The low-code application is responsive. This means the screen layout is adapted to the width of the window. If we take a look at this example, the only thing that could be a little bit better is the space that is occupied by the checkbox. The Figma-Low-Code plugin allows you to override this behavior. We simply select the checkbox element, change to the Styles tab and tick the fixed horizontal checkbox. When we change the width of the low-code application, we can see that the responsiveness works perfectly. Now the low-code frontend is ready. It is responsive and it is bound to the business logic. As a next step, we could improve the business logic, for instance, to communicate with the server. In a last step, we can deploy the application and make it available to our users. Often, the first version of the design is not final, but this is no problem if you're using Figma-Low-Code. Every change is automatically visible in the web application, and there is no need for manual code changes. Figma-Low-Code is open source and free to use. If you like the project, please give us a star in GitHub. Links to the Figma plugin, the GitHub project, and the Figma file can be found in the comments. Thanks for watching.